Welcome back to the deep dive, and today we are diving deep, get ready, into the world of curation.
Ooh, curation sounds fancy.
Right. But it's not just about museums and art galleries, even though we'll definitely go there.
Because we curate things every day.
Right, exactly. Think about it, those Spotify playlists you carefully craft.
Those curated vintage shops with that super specific aesthetic.
We're using the word curate everywhere. So we thought, let's unpack this, see what's really going on behind the scenes when it comes to art curation. And to help us with this deep dive, we have a fantastic expert with us.
Hello. Glad to be here. I'm excited to dive into this. It's a topic full of surprises.
Absolutely. So to get us started, when we say curation, what are we actually talking about? Is it as simple as just picking out things you like and putting them on display?
Well, if only it were that easy. The Milwaukee Art Museum actually has a great blog post about this, and they make a really interesting point that, how do I put it?
Don't be shy. Lay it on us.
Well, they talk about how curatorial jargon, like the word curate itself, is kind of spilling out into everyday language. So even though we think we know what it means, there's this whole other layer of meaning when you're talking about art.
Okay, so unpack that for us. What makes art curation different from, say, making a killer playlist?
It's the depth. You see, both the Milwaukee Art Museum and CAI, which is the International Committee for Museums and Collections of Modern Art, they both emphasize this idea that curating art is about so much more than just choosing objects.
Okay, so it's more involved than just being an art enthusiast with good taste.
Way more. We're talking research, acquisition, managing collections. The exhibition is just one piece of the puzzle.
So it's like you're not just the DJ, you're the musician, producer, and record label all rolled into one.
That's a fantastic way to put it. And a good record label knows its audience, which brings us to a crucial aspect of curation that we can't overlook.
Knowing who you're curating for. Because a room full of Renaissance masterpieces might not resonate the same way with a group of kindergartners as it would with, say, art history buffs.
Exactly. And that's where all this talk about different curatorial models comes in. The GYST article we looked at really emphasized this. Independent curators, artist curators, collaborations, they're all thinking about audience.
Makes sense. You'd curate an exhibition differently for someone who eats, sleeps, and breathes art history versus a family just looking for something cool to check out on a weekend.
100%. In fact, the Art Business News article even talked about how museums are using data now, like visitor data, to understand their audiences better.
Whoa, so it's getting really scientific.
It is. They analyze things like how long people spend looking at certain pieces, what they click on in a digital guide, all to figure out what resonates and why.
Fascinating. So it's not just about trusting your gut anymore. There's data to back it up.
Exactly. And it can prevent some major curatorial mishaps, believe me. The Art Space article had a great cautionary tale.
Ooh, I love a good story. Hit us with it.
All right, imagine this. An industrial space turned minimalist gallery, all white walls, harsh lighting, and the art itself. Very conceptual, very abstract,
That's kind of intense, setting the mood, right?
Exactly. But here's the thing. They invited all these local art collectors, folks used to a more, shall we say, traditional art experience.
Oh, no, I see where this is going.
Yeah, the minimalist aesthetic and the conceptual pieces, it just didn't land. Total mismatch of expectations.
Ouch. A good reminder that knowing your audience is crucial.
And it goes beyond just avoiding disasters like that.
Yeah.
Knowing your audience is about maximizing impact. Like, let's say you're curating historical artifacts. How much background do they need? Do you go all out with timelines and maps, or is it more about letting the objects speak for themselves?
Right, you don't want to overwhelm a history buff with the basics, but you also don't want to lose someone who's just casually interested.
Exactly. The Art Business News article actually suggests things like, get this, pre-exhibition surveys, even using social media to kind of feel out what people are into.
So it's like market research, but for art.
Precisely. It's about making sure the exhibition lands the right way. Speaking of landing, we've talked about what the art itself and the who, the audience, but what about the where, the physical space?
Yes, the exhibition design. Because just having great art doesn't automatically make a great exhibition.
Exactly. It's like you could have the most amazing ingredients, but if you throw them together haphazardly, it's not going to be a very appetizing meal. The Art Business News and Top 10 Tips, they both highlight this. They talk about traffic flow, lighting, even the wall color. It all plays a part.
So no more just hanging paintings in a straight line and calling it a day.
Definitely not. It's all about creating an experience, a journey. That Sotheby's video on Sarah Lucas's work, remember that? Using everyday materials, like those breeze blocks, to create a specific mood.
Right, it felt very raw, almost chaotic. And that was intentional, obviously.
Absolutely. The curator, Mark Godfrey, was talking about working with her on an exhibition of Franz West's work. And it was interesting because he was saying how he comes at it from this angle of context and audience, while Lucas is all about space and material, that artist's eye.
So it's this fascinating collaboration, these different perspectives coming together to shape the final experience.
Exactly. And that made me think of the GYST article again, because they talk about all these different models of curation. Artist curators, guest curator.
Oh, right, like bringing in a specialist, someone who's an expert on, say, ancient Egyptian art to curate a specific exhibition.
Exactly. Or even community-driven exhibitions, where the museum works directly with the community to tell their stories.
That's so cool. It feels like the role of the curator is becoming much broader, more collaborative. And speaking of collaboration, technology has got to be playing a role in all of this, right? I mean, the CAI article mentioned virtual exhibitions, AR, VR. It's a whole new world.
It totally is. The Art Business News actually gave some amazing examples, like imagine using AR to overlay information onto a painting as you're looking at it.
Oh, that would be so cool. No more squinting at those tiny labels on the wall.
Right. Or, get this, virtually stepping inside a Van Gogh painting.
Mm.
Or having a conversation with a holographic recreation of a historical figure.
Okay, that's just next level.
It really is.
Yeah.
Technology is pushing the boundaries of what's possible in terms of curation and audience engagement. It's an exciting time to be in the field, that's for sure.
It really is amazing to see how technology can enhance the art experience, but it also makes you appreciate the power of, well, the opposite, that irreplaceable feeling of standing in front of a real piece of art.
You're hitting the nail on the head.
Hmm.
The Sotheby's video, they actually touched on this, how the pandemic really brought that home for a lot of curators.
Right, because suddenly museums were closed, studio visits were virtual. It was a whole new world.
Yeah.
And not necessarily in a good way, at least for some.
It was definitely an adjustment. In the video, Eleanor Nairn, she's a curator at the Barbican, she was saying how much she missed that energy of being in an artist's studio, surrounded by their work, their process, that tactile experience.
There's something about being immersed in that creative space, right? It's different from seeing a finished piece in a gallery.
Completely.
Yeah.
And Mark Godfrey, he talked about how even though he tried doing studio visits over video call, it just wasn't the same. That spark, that feeling of discovery,
Hmm.
it was missing.
I can totally see that. There's a certain magic to walking into a gallery, that anticipation, the way a piece can surprise you, how it hits you differently depending on the lighting, the scale, even the sound in the room. You just can't replicate that online.
Exactly. And for Margot Norton, she co-curated the new museum triennial during the pandemic. And she said that experience actually made her double down on the physicality of art.
Interesting. How so?
Well, in the Sotheby's video, she talked about how even though they had to work remotely, do a lot of the planning and curating virtually, they ended up really focusing on showcasing art that had a strong physical presence, art you could get up close to, experience with multiple senses.
I love that. It's like they were creating an antidote to all the digital overload.
Exactly. Because let's face it, as amazing as technology is, sometimes we just need to unplug, step away from the screens, and experience something tangible, something real.
Couldn't agree more. It makes me want to put down my phone right now and go visit a museum. So for our listeners who are feeling similarly inspired, what are some key takeaways, some things to keep in mind as they navigate the world of art and exhibitions?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that curation is a journey. It's a process of discovery, both for the curator and the audience. It's about research, storytelling, creating an experience.
It's about making choices, right? Deciding what to include, what to leave out, how to tell the story.
Exactly. And it's about understanding the context, both historical and contemporary. And increasingly, it's about embracing new technologies, experimenting with different ways of engaging the audience.
So well said. It's been an incredible deep dive, to say the least. We've covered so much ground, from the evolving definition of curate to the impact of technology and the importance of the physical experience.
And yet, we've only just scratched the surface.
There's always more to explore, isn't there? But that's the beauty of a deep dive. It's about sparking that curiosity, encouraging our listeners to keep digging, to keep those brains engaged. So here's something to ponder as you go about your day, as you encounter curated experiences in all their forms. Think about the choices being made, the stories being told, and how those choices shape your own understanding and experience of the world around you.
Because curation isn't just happening in museums and galleries, it's everywhere. It's the news you read, the products you buy, the social media feeds you scroll through. Being attuned to that, understanding the why behind those choices, it can make you a more conscious consumer of, well, everything.
So much food for thought. A huge thank you to our expert for guiding us on this insightful journey through the world of curation. And to you, our listeners, thank you for joining us on the deep dive. For those of you who want to explore these ideas further, we've included links to all the sources we discussed in our show notes. So until next time, stay curious, keep exploring, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.